Hello, I'm Rich Spitzer, and welcome to the second part of my introduction to the modern positivity formula and the creation of how to build your positivity IQ. The first part covered the overall research, concepts, and applications of what it means to be more positive. In this next section, I will cover specific lessons that I had to learn, both from research, personal experience, and trial and error, of what it takes to learn to be more positive. This presentation was originally made at an online meetup on November 16th, 2022. It's been slightly edited from the original presentation. Before we get into the details of the lessons I've learned for positivity, it may just give you a refresher or a new introduction to first-time viewers of how I've defined the positivity IQ. Because we're told to be more positive, or you need to be positive most of the time. Because a lot of extensive research has demonstrated that the majority of people's thinking and self-talk, certainly on outlooks on life to specific goals, tends to be negative, fearful, full of doubts and uncertainty. So as I got into this, it was clear that the remedy, if negativity is the primary obstacle to believing in my ability to succeed, then I have to change that mindset. And that wisdom, whether it's an ancient philosophy or uh, familiar proverbs like from Henry Ford, where you think you can or think you can't, you're right. So as I've gone through the research, I focused on one issue. You increase your probability of success by increasing your ratio of positive to negative thoughts. And since there was no established measurement, I used established statistical theory and other disciplines to set a starting point. That when you think about your goals that you want to achieve, at least 68% of your thoughts about that goal and your confidence and your belief in success should be positive. But when I got into positivity, I first thought that it was all about having positive thoughts, but it's really a broader context. As I'll explain here briefly and in other things I've written, positivity is really an all-encompassing skill that supports most of your other efforts and attitudes, choices, and decisions. It's really a combination of your confidence, your motivation, your discipline, how resilient you are, how you deal with obstacles. Can you recognize opportunities? And as I'll explain, very importantly, can you adapt to the realities? So someone says, no matter what plans you have, they're going to change. So my focus became that positivity is perhaps the most important underlying factor in achieving success in what you want to obtain, achieve, or change in your life. Now, positivity is a great tool, it's a great foundation, but it does not guarantee success. Nothing does, but it increases your probability of success. So I wanted to find out, how do I become smarter about understanding and managing my positivity? As many other people have done, reading through ancient philosophies to current cognitive behavioral psychology and therapy, the advice is to be more positive. That's the secret to success. Okay, I'm fine with that. But no one ever defined, what does it mean to be more? How do you measure if you're more positive? When have you achieved enough positivity to be beneficial? And how do you monitor it? How do you become more? So the lessons I'm going to show today are what I've consolidated from my personal experience, my research, and including my background in communications and behavioral research. So I thought I had a great discovery. Let's be positivity smarter. What do we know about ourselves and how can we apply it? And of course, it's hard to ever be the first person to discover something. And I discovered that back in the 1980s, a Harvard psychologist by the name of Howard Gardner said, there are multiple kinds of intelligence. It's not just the Einstein IQ type of intelligence that we're all familiar with, but there are different types of intelligence, all equally important in achieving success. You can be musically smart. You can be body smart, like great athletes. You can have logic and math smart, which of course serves scientists and the physicists and so on. You can be people smart. This is the kind of intelligence where you find in very effective leaders, whether they're in business or political positions, people who understand people. Uh, so there's many different kinds of smarts, and each one can be the foundation for a chosen success. But there is nothing really about how well you know yourself, how well you know the nature of your positive, negative, and uncertain self-talk and thinking. So I believe that's one type of intelligence that is really integrated into all the others, but that has never been defined. And that's what I set out to do. Since there is no established definition or measurement of what would be a positivity intelligence or IQ, I went back to the basics. We all understand for over 100 years have been using the universal IQ. The norm is 100, and we hear about this all the time. So I said, well, if the standard intelligence distribution is the familiar bell-shaped curve, let's use that as the starting point of where should most effective thinking take place. Obviously, you want most to happen in the middle because that is a fundamental distribution of many things in our universe. Uh, so this is the starting point. Every day we talk to ourselves. We have ideas, we make the choices, we take actions. But do we have adequate, smart, positive talks with ourselves that are aligned with what we want to accomplish? So once I established a target of 68% based on universal accepted laws of distribution, I also created a scorecard because if you're going to have a 68% goal, you need a way to measure it. This is it. This is the entire positivity IQ scorecard. 7 simple statements that ideally you assess yourself once a week about how you've been thinking about your goals. And everybody has a mix. Some days I'm up, some days I'm down, and it varies. But if you do an honest self-assessment on a weekly basis, ideal, but don't go more than 2 weeks, you will get 2 scores, your total positive thoughts and then your adjusted positivity score, which is explained more in my literature and books and the previous introduction. But the goal is to get that trend up to your positivity reaches a level of 68% and stay there. And now that we have a measurement, we can also track our progress. If you're doing your weekly scorecard, it's automatically updated in this chart. The yellow line shows your total positive thoughts about yourself, but then at the same time, if you're having negative thoughts, uncertainty, and doubt, that effectively detracts from your positives. You can't be saying, oh, everything is great, I'm going to succeed, but it's probably not going to work, and I'll try it, but nothing ever worked before. If you're having these kind of self-talk conversations, uh, you know that we're always going to be a mix, but the goal is not to try to achieve 100% positivity. That's a myth. It's not necessary. You have to do where most things occur, which is in the middle. Thus, we're starting at 68%. And when you fill out your weekly chart, this will automatically be updated. So the starting point for the positivity IQ, your positive intelligence. How smart are you about what you're thinking? The proposition is you can increase your probability of success just by being average. The average being 68% of your thoughts about your goal, your wants, your wishes should be 68% on a sustained basis. So this is where we started. Out of all my research, all the advice, about being more positive. It's been widely recommended for almost 3,000 years of philosophy. You are what you think, you attract what you think about, but you have to have beliefs, confidence, and optimism. Always explained, always advised, but never defined. How will I know when I have achieved enough positivity to cross that threshold that'll help me sustain my efforts to achieve my goal? I never found an answer that satisfied me. So I took the next step. I dug deeper into the history from ancient times to modern times. How do I learn to be more positive? And it turns out, once I understood the few basic principles and lessons, it wasn't as hard as all the overwhelming literature suggested. mentioned that my background is in communications and marketing and trend and behavioral research. Why do people do what they do? How can information and ideas influence people's choices and behavior? And I've done this for over 50 years. I've done worked on thousands of studies for hundreds of clients and topics, and they're all aimed at trying to find the same answers to how we can better improve our decision making capabilities and reach goals we succeed, whether it's an individual, an organization, or a society. So the fundamental process I used was not to do esoteric academic research. There's lots of that, and I learned from it. So I look for the ideas that have been present throughout history, ideas that have persisted and have been noted and observed by philosophers, teachers, scientists, and everyday people, and that were, to me, common sense. So the existing literature had lots of ideas, but they still never helped me understand how to be more positive. Thus was born the positivity IQ concept. As I mentioned, I looked at the centuries of philosophy and wisdom, looked at the current modern psychological practices. There's cognitive therapy, certainly one of the most popular, but it goes back to, whether it's Jung or Freud or going back 100 years or 300 years. People have always been self-aware, and it's been a great philosophical question to delve into our consciousness. Why are we self-aware? How do we understand it? And how do we manage it? And of course, go online and Google it, go to Amazon. There's countless books and programs about how to be happier, more successful, more positive, wealthier, start a new business, and so on. Unlimited. So I've looked at all of this over a number of years. And then I have my own actual experiences. I mean, you as we are living this experiment. So we have to also give ourselves credit for what we observe, what we do, what we think works and what doesn't work, but also look at that in the context of all the other advice. When I say the advice is overwhelming, just Google positive thinking, over 1 billion results. Positive psychology, almost 800 million. Go on Amazon, you want to buy a book on positive thinking, they only give you a maximum of 10,000 results. So there's lots out there, and that can be overwhelming. There's more than you can learn in a lifetime. So my goal is, can I read through as much of this as I did over many years, and reduce it to a few simple practical principles. Just to go one step further, there is extensive psychological and academic research on uh, what is positivity and positive thinking, is it beneficial, and so on. So I just have a couple of clips here. Uh, there are many articles that talk about doing a meta-analysis of prior studies. A meta-analysis is basically doing a study of prior studies to find common elements that point in a productive direction, all kinds of statistical analysis. But two things come out over and over and over again from all these studies and the studies on studies, highlighted here in yellow. Positive psychology interventions can be effective in your subjective and psychological well-being. However, there's always the disclaimer. There's a need for more high quality studies to know what works for whom. So this became ultimately frustrating for me. They tell me it works. They tell me to be more positive, but you kind of have to find out on your own, or sometimes with the help of a professional, to find out what works for you. And I built on that to find, yes, something that worked for me, which became eventually the positivity IQ and the related scorecard. Positive thinking really pervades our society, our popular culture. You can buy refrigerator magnets, you can drink it out of your coffee cup, you can wear it, be positive. There's posters, you can read professional articles. They're all encouraging, they're all supportive, they all support the idea of be positive, and there's lots and lots of words. This one poster in the middle, there's hundreds, literally thousands of statements, phrases, and words, all encouraging you to be positive in whatever it means to you. But again, they don't really tell you how to be positive. So now I'm going to get into the heart of this edition, finding the lessons for positivity. I reduced everything I found into 7 broad lessons, and within them, 36 simple ways or practices or exercises for how to change negative thoughts to more positive thoughts. Now, if you've looked into this before, you have to distinguish between, overall lessons and techniques versus the tools. You may have found what I did. You should be meditating, mindfulness, expressing gratitude, doing journaling. These are all useful tools to help you achieve a state of positivity, but by themselves, they're not the magic wand that creates positivity. They are the means to the end, but you need a broader context of what you have to learn and how you have to practice it, which I'll cover now briefly. If I have to summarize, everything that I've learned from the philosophy over the centuries can be recreated in the simple statement from, Glinda the Good Witch to Dorothy the Wizard of Oz. You always had the power, my dear. You just had to learn it yourself. I believe this is true for this aspect of our psychology. We all have capabilities to be positive, more positive, but it's not something that's formally taught. You either seem to be born a naturally optimistic person or someone mentored you along the way. As we often hear celebrities say, my mother, my father, my grandfather, my grandmother, my coach, my teacher told me I could be anything I wanted to be. I could be a success if I worked hard enough. So basically, there are lots of tools and techniques, but it's something that I believe most everybody has inherently if you can find some new, simple, common sense tools to help most people most of the time. So now I'm about to take you into the 7 lessons and 36 exercises. And don't let it be overwhelming. Uh, there is so much out there in the thousands, maybe millions of pieces of advice. But I learned that, there are useful lessons. You don't need to learn them all at the same time. I found that different lessons were helpful at different points in different circumstances. Some you have to build on, some are one-off. Um, some lessons you can learn in a day, just recognition that, oh, yes, I have to do that. Sometimes you need to be reminded every day when you have, persistent uh, personality traits that could be obstacles. For example, uh, I'm an impatient person, as many people would acknowledge to themselves too. So I've made progress. I'm a little bit more patient than I was a couple of years ago, but I haven't solved it. So it's a daily issue for me. But when I encompass everything I'm going to show you, my positive IQ has reached its target, and it's a lot higher than it was when I started, and this is what keeps me going. So one issue that always comes up is, does positivity work for all goals? Yes. But one thing that kind of threw me off track in the beginning was I have to be positive about everything in life in order to be positive about something specific. I think that's great if you can be. I don't think it's necessary. There's, seems to be 3 broad categories of uh, what people want to obtain. They want to have a happier, more positive outlook on life, be content, and it's generally under the category of happiness. Uh, Connected positivity is what I'm describing, gets into relationships with friends, family, organizations that you want to be part of, a greater societal human contact, which is quite different than, the third category, which is I want to start a new business. I want to finish my education. I want to be more financially secure. Uh, these are all widespread, legitimate categories of goals. You may have a goal in every category. To the extent that you can have an overall change in your positivity outlook, develop a positivity habit, and you can apply that to all of them, that is ideal, that's perfect. But we all know, just from seeing the news, there are many people who've achieved very high levels of success in the world, especially celebrities in entertainment who have led tragic lives. So they had very high levels of applied positivity. They became a star, but their personal happiness positivity apparently was inadequate uh, to provide that happiness in life. So yes, you can have all three, but uh, don't make that as your ultimate goal. You have to decide what kind of goal you have, what kind of positivity will support it. And I believe that the basic principles apply to all of them. I'm just going to reminder you don't need to be a happy, outgoing, personable, always happy person in general in order to achieve your goal. And frankly, that's how I got into this whole area. I had specific goals I wanted to achieve after I retired, and I found obstacles, challenges, disappointments, and frustrations. So I focused on that. And as it went along, I think some of it spilled over into just generally being a more happy and content person with better relationships too. Here's a summary of the 7 lessons I learned for positivity. This will be the subject of my next book, The Positivity IQ. Um, Easier to just go through the graphic on the left. I think you have to know yourself, know more about your personality, your attitudes, because that's your starting point. And then you need realistic plans and goals. You have to commit to do the work. You have to connect to making choices and taking actions. And you have to engage with what you're doing. You just don't push a button and let it go. You have to always remain creative and curious. And then you have to be able to respond and adapt to the realities. To me, this continuous process results in increasing your positivity IQ. Now I'll take you through a brief review of each of these categories. Um, And keep in mind that I'm giving you the overview, but for everything I'm going to show you, you can find a book, a program, a therapist who will help you be uh, uh, better able to make choices and take actions, to be more realistic. These are all part and parcel of the same overall concept, but as I'll show you, it wasn't as hard as I thought once I understood the nature of the process. I try to make an interesting infographic about the 36 individual practices or exercises or personality traits I had to work with to achieve my goals to become more positive. 36 is not a magic number. One time I had a list of 156. That was too much. Uh, so I boiled it down to 52, and a couple of people said, I can't deal with 52. It's too much. So I kept shrinking it to which items really connected to me, which words meant something to me that made sense to me, and it turned out to be 36. Some people may find there's only 10 things they really need, some may find they need more. But this is the list that I think came out of my research and my personal experience. And now I'll take you briefly through them. So as I take you through these lessons, don't think of that this is like this is so much to learn. How am I going to study this? I think I will make the case that most of what you have to do is back in like the Wizard of Oz quote. Most of what you already need, you already have. It's in your self-talk every day. But we don't really understand or manage or catalog what we're thinking. But if we learn to build a positivity habit with some simple exercises, we can better turn our already existing self-talk into a more productive positivity plan. So remember, the goal is to balance our positive, negative, and uncertain conversations we have with ourselves. And we have a target. 68% of our thoughts and self-talk about our issue, our goal, should be positive. Then I found somebody wrote something very interesting, and I've expanded on it. There's a lot of research out there that says we have 40,000, 50,000, 60,000, 70,000 or more thoughts every day. And a lot of those thoughts are tend to be more negative than positive. But this other author, and as I've pursued it, said, if every thought was just a word, and in fact, it's probably more like several words, that's the equivalent of writing a book. A typical nonfiction book. The ones I've written are 45, 50,000 words. A novel could be 100,000 words. So you, through your self-talk and the words you use every day, are creating the equivalent of a book. This is what I call your self-talk book. So if you're doing this every day, think about the kind of book you want to create, what's your role in it. Are you the hero or the villain? Will the book have a happy ending or a tragic ending? It's up to you, but you're already doing the work. You're already having the conversations with yourself. So as other people point out, you have to learn to change the stories you tell yourself. And as I learned, uh, and I've said, you already had most of it in your own self-talk. So let me take these lessons and put it into a self-talk progress chart. Know yourself. So this is the kind of conversations I had with myself. I would say something like, well, I have a goal. I was successful in my old life. I can be successful again. Still, I should be grateful for the many good things that I have. Well, I have a goal, but it's too late to go back to school. But maybe I can use my research skills to write about my interests. Sure, I have to learn a few things, but I can start today. So again, these are the conversations I had with myself, but I didn't have a direction. I didn't have a target. Uh, but to continue the conversation, and I have to commit to the work. Well, I was retired. I have the time. Uh, I have no problem doing the work. I've spent, decades delivering results to clients, except the one time this is different now is that I'm the client. I only have to commit to do the work for myself. That sometimes is harder than doing it for when you're working in a job or doing it for a client, because then you are held accountable. But when you do it for yourself, it's easy to make excuses and take diversions. But I knew I could do it because I've done it before. Yes, I can make decisions. I can take actions. That doesn't scare me. But there was another part of connecting, which is, as I've read, you need to take care of yourself too. And one of those decisions and actions is, try to live a healthier lifestyle. It's hard to, especially if you're younger and you have lots of years ahead of you and you want to achieve your goals, live a healthier life. That will help support it. Uh, some of the most obvious things are reduce stress, get more sleep, eat healthy. This is all part of generating a higher level of not just positivity about a goal, but a positivity about your state of mind and your physical and psychological well-being. Engage. I've always been engaged in my work. I love research, writing, discovering new solutions. And in this case, I've discovered that no one knows what it means to be more positive. So finally, recognize and adapt. Um, Putting all these things together, I still had to be realistic that things are going to change. I have to be alert to those challenges or opportunities, and this is something I've always done. So I don't have any problem with, you know, changing what I'm doing if I have enough information. So don't be afraid of that. So these little bubbles here represent, a simplistic version of the kind of self-talk, the conversations I have with myself over a period of time. Now, I didn't necessarily know this when I started out, but looking back, when I read the advice to be more positive, control your self-talk, I developed the scorecard. Uh, the reality is, the lessons I had to learn, I was already living every day. I just didn't organize them into a continuous stream of focused, positive thinking and to use what I already knew and to apply that to my new goals. So you have the tools, you have it in your inherent abilities. Don't be overwhelmed. It's something you learn over time. So now I'll take you through quickly the 36 individual exercises or practices which I've written about, and many of them are covered in the workbook that goes with my Modern Positivity book. Now, these are the ideas that connected to me. These are the words I've used to summarize. Uh, I think the basic lessons are the same for most all goals and most people, but you may use different words. You may have a little different, vocabulary. Uh, I'm also throwing in a few quotes from wise people just to, confirm that, okay, I've made these observations and these recommendations, but I'm just one of the more recent people who's done the same thing that people have been doing for a long, long time. Hopefully, by introducing a new measurement, the positivity IQ, it'll help bring all these ideas together in something that's understandable, measurable, and manageable and supports your progress. Talked about the first one being to know yourself. This is really, your self-perception, but also the perceptions other people have of you, about your personality, your attitudes, your beliefs, uh, there's so many elements here that make up who we are. Um, this is probably the most intense category. And like I mentioned before, there's a book on every one of these. Um, if you go back to my first presentation, and as I'll be writing in the future, some of these really popped out at me that we were surprised, like gratitude. There's really so substantial, medical evidence now that uh, people who can be in a state of being grateful, uh, appreciating what they have. This is a very positive tool for replacing negative thoughts with positive thoughts. All of these elements, they now recognize help change our brain chemistry, or as they call it, rewiring our brain, neuroplasticity. In order to change the way you think, you have to change the way you think about yourself and your interactions. So this is the kind of person I am. What do I believe in? Can I be forgiving myself and others for things that have, made me angry or negative? Uh, yes, I have to learn to be more patient. And this idea of being grateful, expressing gratitude. And I'm sure you've heard before, live in the now. Eckhart Tolle wrote a book about now, just one of many people who talked about you have to live in the present. Somebody said, to paraphrase, the past is history, the future is a mystery, all you have is now. And other wise people have said, all your nows create your future. Uh, Aldous Huxley, the great philosopher and writer, said, there's only one corner of the universe that you can be certain of improving, and that's your own self. Absolutely true. But in order to do it, we need to understand ourselves and have some tools to do it. Second, you have to have realistic goals and plans. Uh, I don't think there's a lot of different elements here. What are your goals? What are your intentions? What do you envision for yourself? Do you have a plan and tools to do it? And do you have a role model, a benchmark? Um, Endless people have written the same things. Henry Kissinger, whether you like him or don't like him, had an interesting statement. If you do not know where you are going, every road will get you nowhere. Um, again, since the beginning of time, philosophers have said, you need a goal. Otherwise, what are you pursuing? But you have to be realistic. Like I said, when I retired, I thought maybe I'll go back to school. And at that age, maybe I could have. But 20 years later, you know, in my 70s, I'm not going back to school, but I can focus on being a writer. So you must be realistic, not, it's okay to daydream and have fantasies, but what's within your physical abilities, your time resources? Uh, there are realities in life. So this is not a magic wand. No, you can't be anything you want to be, but you might be able to be what you want to be that's realistic and meets other criteria of capabilities, resources, and time. And I think we all have plenty of things we'd like to achieve in life, but we can't achieve everything, but we can probably achieve more than we thought if we have a positive psychology plan. Whatever your plans, whatever your goals, however positive, you still have to do the work. There's no magic wand. There's no book that says you can do this overnight that I would believe in. You have to do what Vidal Sassoon said. The only place where success comes before work is in the dictionary. Great advice in a few words. The words that keep coming up over and over that I connected to were perseverance, motivation. You got to focus. Can't be diverted. You can't be procrastinating all the time. Uh, it's just you got to do the work. Maybe there's a few fortunate people who have found an alternative method, but for most all people at all time throughout history, from Greek philosophers to Thomas Edison to Wayne Dyer, you got to transform your ideas and energy and thoughts into real actions. You have to do the work. And part of doing the work, you have to make choices. You have to take actions. Um, you can't have great beliefs, confidence in yourself, read more and more books, but eventually you have to turn those thoughts and wishes and desires and positivity into concrete actions. If you want to start a business, obviously, a lot of things you have to do. You want to go back to school, you want to lose weight, you want to live a healthier lifestyle. These all require transforming wishes and intentions into a plan, increase your confidence in yourself to do it, and then, as the Nike ad once said, just do it. You must turn those thoughts into actions. Yes, I also added in, but you also need to be healthy in order to do it, because that could be a great diversion. Closing in on the end of the 36, you have to engage with your process. It's great to be positive, have plans, and do the work, but yeah, things are going to come up. New things that can help you, things will be obstacles. So you constantly have to be use your imagination and creativity, learn from what you're encountering, see the possibilities. The quote over on the right by William Blake. I love that quote, and it's been repeated, many times over the centuries. What is now proved was once only imagined. Basically, every single thing in our life today, from air travel to frozen food to TVs to YouTube, everything was just an idea. But somebody had the imagination, the perseverance, the motivation, the confidence that they would create something that turned out to be what we have here today. This has been the history of human development. There are always enough people with ideas, confidence, plans, persistence, and imagination to create all that we have today. And it's not over. It'll never be over. But whatever your scale, whether it's to change your own life or to run a giant organization, all these things have to work together. Last on the list is where I find perhaps most plans actually fail. You have to recognize realities and adapt to the real world. You can be positive. You can have a great plan. You can do the work. You can be creative and do more research. But obstacles are going to come up. You're going to change. The world's going to change. New information will come your way. Uh, you have to be observant, shrewd, and say, is this going to help me? Is it an obstacle? Do I have to change my plans? This is just another fact of life. And the simpler you can keep it, the better. But you need to be constantly aware of what's going on. Stay the course until there's something that makes you recognize you need to change what you're doing. And yes, resilience, another word that comes up over and over again. I forgot which philosopher said it, but that it doesn't matter how many times you've been knocked down, as long as you keep getting back up again. Other quotes along the same line said, so many people give up one step before they could have achieved success. Of course, that has been stated by people who actually did achieve success and know that they took one more step. So, again, in my business life, this is where I saw more people fail to achieve their goals than at any of the other stages. Enthusiastic, creative, hardworking people uh, did not keep in tune with what's going on, did not adapt, and all their great intentions, often ended in failure to achieve their goals. Well, now you know that I like to keep score, so here's one more scorecard. I've said there are 7 lessons I had to learn, and I've tried to assign the importance. Basically, all 7 are important. I give 6 of them A grades, all equally important. But ultimately, knowing my positivity IQ was the one lesson that encompassed everything and pulled it all together. And by having an actual target, knowing where I was on my positivity score, helped me know where I was, where I had to go, and then I can take specific actions to basically go from a down mood to an up mood and reinstate that positivity. So I took my scorecard and looked back. If I had to grade myself where I was at the beginning versus where I am today, uh, I've demonstrated here. Now, I didn't know this in the beginning, but looking back, I think this is a fair assessment if I try to be honest. As Dostoevsky said, we all have things we're afraid to tell ourselves, and it's all stored away. So all this advice and programs to increase positivity only works if you try to be as honest with yourself as possible. You're only doing it for yourself. And if you can't convince yourself about the honesty and the possibilities of success, uh, you've created the largest obstacle you're going to achieve. So if I try to go back to where I started, uh, how well did I know myself? On a scale of 0 to 100, I gave myself a 10. When I looked at all the elements of personality, from patience to optimism to detachment, I scored pretty poor on it. Uh, I had some goals. I think they were reasonably realistic. I wasn't trying to become a 60-year-old star athlete, but I just want to stay in research and writing. But I hadn't thought it all the way through. However, I had no problems about. I know I can do the work. I can make choices. Choices. Uh, the whole thing started because I was curious and I believe creative. But would I recognize opportunities and obstacles in the beginning? I was probably a little more stubborn about what I wanted to do. I didn't react to realities as well as I believe I can today. So basically, my positivity IQ, if I scored myself back then, was 0. Today, I know a lot more about myself, but it goes up and down, good days and bad days, good weeks and bad weeks. Patience, impatience, you know, try to micromanage versus step back and let the world unfold at its own pace. So overall, I'm doing pretty good. I think my goals are consistently realistic and I stay above my threshold of 68%. I do the work, I can make choices, I'm still engaged, but now I think I'm pretty consistent in being able to adapt to what's going on around me. If the world is changing, if my interests are changing as I get older, I can adapt. I don't hang on to the original idea and say it's this or nothing. So I think I give myself a final grade of always being at my threshold of at least 68% positivity IQ. And knowing that, it helps reinforce everything else that I'm doing. Well, that concludes a review of the uh, presentation I gave on lessons I learned for positivity. There should be more. If you want to contact me about programs, questions, or suggestions, this is my email. Uh, the meetup #1 is already on YouTube. This one will also be posted there shortly. I have a website that's in the process of being updated, modernpositivity.com. And I thank you for taking the time to listen to this. And I hope that you will find some lessons here that you can adopt and adapt to your own particular goals. Thank you.